the man calmly drove his daughter to buy a dress for the prom. He seemed like nothing more than a loving father, but he had no idea. In a matter of seconds, an explosion would rip his world apart and awaken the dormant killing machine within him. An explosion tore through a London street corner. A device on a motorcycle was detonated. The shockwave threw the man to the ground, but he ignored his own injuries. He rushed into the clothing store, now reduced to rubble. He cradled his daughter, whose life had already slipped away. This man is Quan, a former Special Forces soldier. Now, he is just a father who has lost his only child. Beyond his grief lay a cold will for revenge. Every day, he visited Counter-Terrorism Command, inquiring about the case's progress. But all he received were evasions. Political maneuvering was far more important than a civilian's life. He offered his life savings, trying to bribe the inspector, just to get the killer's name. He was rejected. The authorities' incompetence left him utterly disillusioned. He understood that justice could only be served by his own hand. On the TV news, a man caught his attention. Northern Ireland Deputy Minister Liam Hennis. He was once the leader of an extremist organization, yet now, he publicly condemned violence. Quan's instinct told him, this man knew something. He decided Hennis was the key to his revenge. He drove to Belfast, arriving at Hennis's office building. He was dismissed as an ordinary old man, a harmless nuisance. Hennis appeased him with a politician's tone, claiming he had long severed ties with terrorists. He was escorted out. But Quan did not leave. He entered the restroom, taking out 2 bottles of liquid explosives disguised as wine. He hung the bottles with a rope. He removed the cigarette filter and inserted a match head. He clamped the rock fuse to the rope and lit it. Then, he calmly left the building. The cigarette burned out, igniting the match, which then severed the rope. The bottle fell, mixing the liquids, and the toilet's biogas was instantly detonated. This was a warning. Hennis was enraged. He couldn't believe an old man could do such a thing. But he still wouldn't reveal the name. Quan's second warning soon followed. He snuck into the garage and planted an IED at the fuel tank opening of Hennis's car. The detonator was connected to the headlight wiring, with match phosphorus powder coating the filament. As soon as the car was started, the current would ignite the phosphorus powder, detonating the entire vehicle. But he deliberately left a note with a name on it. He didn't want to kill. He wanted information. Hennis felt fear. He sent his men to apprehend Quan, but they weren't facing an old man. They were facing a sophisticated combat machine. In the cramped hotel, Quan used the terrain, evaded, and counterattacked. He leaped down the stairs. His aging body was in severe pain, but his combat instincts remained undiminished. He headbutted one man, then used the chaos to escape into the night. Hennis's men were wiped out. To escape this phantom, Hennis fled back to his farm in the countryside. But he didn't know that Quan had already begun tracking him, like a predator, monitoring his prey's every move. Even taking photos of Hennis's tryst with his mistress. This was leverage that could destroy his political career. Quan infiltrated the farm and planted a time bomb in the stable, and swiftly subdued 2 bodyguards. The explosion sounded once again. Hennis finally realized he was entangled with an adversary he couldn't shake off. Immediately after, a second explosion, a remote-controlled bomb, rang out outside the house. This meant Quan was close by. Hennis sent his men into the jungle to search. They had stepped into a death trap. Quan had rigged the area with traps, using skills he learned during the Vietnam War. Tripwires, spike traps, hidden pits. The bodyguards were incapacitated one by one, trapped like prey. Quan emerged from the shadows, ready to interrogate. But reinforcements arrived. He was shot and wounded, forced to retreat into the jungle again. By this point, Hennis was already overwhelmed. He had to contend with Quan, as well as a political situation spiraling out of control. It turned out he had tacitly approved the initial bombing to create chaos, then quell it himself to consolidate his power. But his subordinates, including his wife and confidant, McGrath, had formed a more radical faction that was beyond his control. The British government pressured him, demanding he hand over the perpetrators. He planned to flush out the mole by changing the operation code. It was then that Quan infiltrated his home. He had explosives he made strapped to his body. With a grim determination to die together, he forced Hennis to reveal his plan. Hennis completely broke down and divulged the entire code plan, hoping to get rid of this relentless menace. However, when the new bombing occurred, the terrorists used no codes. Hennis's plan had failed. He had lost the trust of both the authorities and Quan, but the police identified the perpetrators through other clues. He was shocked to discover that McGrath, Hennis's confidant, was prominently listed. Cornered, Hennis chose betrayal. At gunpoint, he forced McGrath to write down the names of all his accomplices, and saw his mistress's name on the list. He was betrayed by everyone. Hennis sent his nephew, Sean, to deal with Quan. In the jungle, 2 expertly trained men engaged in a fight to the death. Quan was older, physically exhausted, and wounded. But his will for revenge overpowered everything. He killed Sean and got the address of the bomber's hideout apartment from him. Quan, disguised as a maintenance worker, knocked on the killer's door. He identified the man with a scar on his hand as one of the bombers. He gave no more warnings, asked for no more names. He pulled out his gun and unleashed a massacre in the cramped space. This was judgment. When he ran out of bullets, he used everything around him as a weapon. For his daughter, he transformed into a demon. When the police stormed the apartment, there was only chaos and one survivor. The police learned from him that a bomb had been planted on a flight to London. After a thrilling bomb disposal operation, the crisis was averted. At the end of the film, Quan found Hennis again. He took out the photo. Hennis's mistress was a member of the bombing cell. The root of everything stemmed from this politician's ambition and lies. Quan didn't kill him, he simply uploaded the photo to the internet. For Hennis, this was more brutal than death. Revenge was complete. Quan turned and vanished into the London rain.